My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even the score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Hello, Night Nation, and welcome to the Knighted Ones podcast, episode number 66. We are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper that's infamous, so we'll see if we get a rap because he's back, our resident influencer and IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF sports. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70 plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle, Big 12 Huddle, 4th in Florida, and the new stream that we'll get around to eventually. So been an exciting week for Night Nation. We are recording on a Tuesday night. We did that with intention. Obviously it was for Cyber Monday reasons, but also because we were kind of hoping that we'd get a little more of an update on the coaching situation. We UCF kind of lost in the shuffle here, has lost two coaches this week. So obviously you've got Gus Malzahn and you've got Jenny Maurer from our UCF volleyball team. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. However, the big news, Gus Malzahn is no longer at UCF, and he did something that I told you last week, and I didn't believe anybody in his right mind would do, which is walk away from $12 million. So without further ado, let's get the show started. First to the stage, as always, Nobra.
Hey now.
Hey now, you disappeared when you said that one. I don't know what you did with your mic, but you just like, whoosh. All right. Welcome back to the show. We missed you last week. I was a terrible producer and had way too much gap in that first slide because I totally forgot about it. So I'm glad you're back. So I don't have to do things, and the fans don't have to suffer through it. So let's get that hair flip before we get our next person to the stage. All right, there we go. All right, next to the stage, the tallest man in all of podcasting, Ben Stout. Welcome back, sir.
What's up? What's up? Yeah, we had a quite the interesting weekend for UCF Night Nation. So I'm excited to talk about it tonight. I'm excited to be back with you guys.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm glad you're thawed out from that West Virginia game. That looked
barely thawed out. The weather kind of traveled with me down here to Florida this week. It's been pretty chilly in the mornings.
Yeah, I mean, you see me. I'm wearing my UCF Columbia jacket right now. Yep. All right, your fellow bad weather brother, Alan Levin, welcome back to the stage.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, as Ben alluded to, we're freezing. The Utah game, if you guys checked our YouTube shorts, you saw that we had a short that we put out there, and I had my beanie on because it was freezing for Florida, and that's not allowed.
It's cold tonight, too.
I know.
It is
What's
chilly,
wrong?
man.
You people need to take all that weather back to West Virginia.
I don't want to go back anytime soon. That's for sure. I had a good time up there, but not really the football in the field. It wasn't really fun to watch as Al and I were hanging out together watching that game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was fun time,
underneath
sure.
a blanket. So last but not least, but always last, and freshly back from Europe, Josh Lazar. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, everyone. So listen, I just got in here. I didn't hear anything that was just going on. And the last memory I have when I was in Florida is that we won this great game in Arizona, right? So so let me get this straight. I'm going to make a prediction of what happens since the Arizona game. Let me see. So we did really well there. So we knocked it out the next two games where we have 6 wins. We're going to a bowl game. Gus is happy. Fans are happy. Does that sound about right?
No.
Yeah,
really?
Didn't predict very well there.
No,
No, that's not what happened.
I think it was on point.
What's going on?
I don't know. The roller coaster ride that is UCF football has taken another turn, and we're now currently upside down with change falling out of pockets and holding on dearly to our cell phones. That's exactly what's happening.
Couldn't have imagined something like that would happen.
well, let's talk about it. Let's get into a little bit about what happened. Obviously we'll talk a little bit about the Utah game, but the big news is Gus Malzahn moves on pretty quickly to FSU. After that Utah game, we were all, really, really angry. For lack of a better term. I had to think about that. I was going to say sad, but I think the vibe was angry. Gus Malzahn left through the tunnel at the game, and the last moments of him as the head coach on the field of a UCF football game was the students surrounding the tunnel screaming "Fire Gus," and I think that was the mood after that game. And then we had some silence. Gus did his post-game presser. And then we didn't hear anything. We didn't hear anything from Gus. We didn't hear anything from Terry Mohajir. The presser, the scheduled presser was not available. And we kind of were in a void, but everybody was screaming at the top of their lungs. We talked about it last show on Gus Malzahn, and I didn't think that he would not be the coach of UCF football, quite simply, as I explained last week, was that it was too costly for us to part ways. Now, a lot of vitriol has been spewed at Gus Malzahn, and rightfully so for the on-field performance of the team, some of the decisions, all those different things. The quarterback controversy, it seems like for years and years and years. We had another one this year. Cycling through 4 different quarterbacks, and even within in the Utah game, some questionable quarterback decisions. Yeah, frustrating, more so than questionable. But Gus Malzahn, as of the recording of this podcast, he's taken a role at FSU with his former protege, who is now head coach there. And he walked away from $12 million. So say what you want, and I don't care what you say. The fact that he walked away from $12 million and UCF basically dodged a bullet. And he also sent a pretty nice message. The past few days we've been seeing all of the Twitter folks out there screaming at their top of their lungs, why wasn't there a goodbye message? Well, you got it tonight, and was well crafted, whether it was written by ChatGPT or heartfelt. He still had to put the prompts in. And at the end of the day, the message was clear. I think that as we begin to turn the page and look back on the Gus Malzahn era, he was a guy who, to use his phrase, was a real guy, in the sense that he really did want to do well here. He did really plan to be our coach for a long period of time, and wanted to be the face of the franchise, and it just didn't work out. And he left in probably the most classy way that you possibly could. And when it comes to Gus Malzahn as the human being and person and off the field, there's a lot of things that aren't talked about in the media that some of these head coaches do. George O'Leary was another one, off the field, that speak to what their character is and who they are as a person. And I think that Gus Malzahn portrays himself a certain way, and I think he lives it. And if anything, that $12 million to me spoke volumes as to the person he was and the fact that he did not want to hurt UCF. So thank you, Gus Malzahn, not just for your time here, but also for the way that you left us behind. So nothing but well wishes from me, because he kind of fell on the proverbial sword for UCF so that we were not in a position where we couldn't hire someone. So all of that being said, I'll let you guys get any comments that you want on that exit as far as that's concerned, and then we will turn the page to who's next. So, gentlemen, anything that you want to kind of say to close out this chapter?
So go like. I agree with what you said. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better scenario for UCF as a fan base, just our football program, our overall athletic program, for Gus to find a landing spot as quickly as he did, and in a way that we're not owed we don't owe him the $12 million. That was obviously the biggest concern. And it felt so hopeless after that Utah game, after the debacle. That was kind of we ended the game on a pick six. I think that was our last offensive play, or at least at the very most, it was our last offensive play that anybody remembers. And it was just it was just kind of like a microcosm of the season. It was like such a great example of the season, just having kind of another baffling offensive play that that just went against us in such a, strange way. And when that game ended and Gus is walking off the field and you see that video that you talked about, Roger, it's like, how can this continue? How can he, even take a step back and reflect, which there's no time to do nowadays in college football because signing day is coming up and the transfer portal opens next week. And there's no time to catch your breath after you have a horrible season, a disappointing season, whether you're UCF or anybody in the country. And so it's just a strange way to kind of end the season where you don't get any chance to catch your breath after a disappointing losing season anymore. And so I guess he would have done that for maybe a day or two if he didn't have this exit plan. And so kind of, thank goodness he did. Thank goodness he, whoever came up with the idea, whether it was himself, his agent, Mike Norvell, or even Terry Mahajer, through a conversation with it. And in the sense that there had to be a conversation with Terry Mahajer. They had to talk about the buyout. They had to talk about the exit plan. They had to talk about the next steps. And so however this came about, where he moves to FSU as their next offensive coordinator, I just think it worked out extremely well for our side, for sure. Whether or not it works out for FSU side, like, honestly, I don't think anybody in UCF Knight Nation cares, and I'm one of those. I'm one of those. I mean, I wish him well personally. I've seen him, or as far as what I've seen, Roger, I have no ground to disagree with what you said about the man he is. I think some of the ways that his staff and his players have always talked about him, I honestly haven't seen many bad things ever said about him, about any former player, whether they transferred or not. And so I think that he is a good man, and I kind of know that, I guess I should say. And I'm just very thankful that he was able to leave us with this $12 million kind of gift, that we didn't have to spend that opportunity cost because it would have been tough for us. That being said, I mean, after that Utah game, I was fully ready to come on this podcast saying that let's spend it. Like, I mean, if this didn't happen this past weekend, I was fully ready. And I think a lot of us were, to say, like, I think we need to honestly think about spending it, like, as much as tough as that is, because it just felt like after this season, it didn't seem like the bottom had even been reached yet. And it certainly didn't seem like the ceiling was high at all. And so we needed a change of pace. We needed a different direction. And I'm glad that we are on the path of getting that. And so I'm thankful to Gus Malzahn that he put us in a much better way. Our program is much healthier today than it was at 10 p.m. on Friday night. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Ben. Well said. This absolutely was the best case scenario for all sides. I think we've all said that. No one's ever questioned, Gus's character. I think we've all respected him as the man and the person. Like you said, no one's ever really had a lot of any ill will to him. He's been a stand-up guy, a family man, someone I respected as a person. And I said this from day one. I truly believed that he wanted it to work out here. He wasn't like mailing it in like a Tommy, Tuberville at Cincinnati or whatever. Like he wanted this to work. You could see the excitement on his face when he got here from Auburn. Like he looked like he was refreshed and really wanted to, like you said, build this thing the right way. If someone actually stayed and built the program, he wasn't that guy. It just didn't work out. Whether college football passed him by or whatever the case, I don't really think the reason why it didn't work out matters. It just flat out didn't. And it became clear that the situation was just no longer tenable. When you have fans booing you at Spirit Splash and fans booing you after games and fans chanting "Fire Gus" and all the just hate that was spewed on social media, on Twitter and whatnot, it just became clear that it was no longer tenable for him, for the donors, for the fan base, for the higher ups. And this really was the best case scenario. I mean, it's tough because I wanted to work out. I liked Gus Malzahn. I mean, yeah, he probably gave a lot of coach speak and all that, but his recruiting was exciting. And, some of the stuff he did.
So here's the moment where I want to like play back the older episodes from the season where you're like ready to like jump off.
Yeah. No, that doesn't mean I didn't want him fired. I'm just saying like now in retrospect, when you look back, like, you appreciate some of the things he did. It doesn't mean like I said, the situation wasn't tenable anymore. Like I didn't want him here anymore. I would, if he didn't decide to step down, he was still here and he was holding us hostage for 12 million. I'd absolutely be calling for his head, but I think he went out the honorable way. Like he went out and, like you said, kind of gave us like a parting gift for Christmas here for this to work out in this scenario where we don't owe a dime and we have the funds to hire at least a decent coach. It was the best case scenario. I'm just saying, like, the faith was lost. And I said this immediately after the Colorado loss, which was only our first loss of the season. If you lose faith in a team and a coach after one loss, after starting out 3-0, I think that kind of has the writing on the wall there. Like we literally all, or I at least did, and I think some others on this podcast felt that was the beginning of the end. Like it felt that way from then. Like I had no faith that this thing was turning around even after one loss. Like I just saw the writing on the wall of how other seasons under Malzahn had ended or had continued, that was coming. And if you lose faith after a guy after one loss, it's clear that it wasn't going to work out. So, this was the best case scenario. And I think UCF is better off today. And it's what the big thing is it's reignited some excitement. The apathy was at an all-time low. I mean, this felt 2015 levels of just fan excitement. You could tell, season tickets, things like that weren't going to be getting renewed. It felt like a situation where we were just going downhill and there was nothing Gus Malzahn could have done to convince us. What could he have done? All of his top playmakers are leaving. Everyone's transferring. I mean, this would be a total rebuild, even if he went 7-5, 8-4 this year. So there was going to be no type of thing he could say or do that would have turned this around or made us feel like he could turn it around. So now that we are going to in the midst of a coaching search, there's some excitement again. Like I'm excited for the off season, and it feels like even if next year is a rebuild year, the hope for a new vision and a new future and getting back on track where we felt where we should be going is exciting again.
All right, Josh, I know you were asleep, in Europe the whole time hibernating, but what do you think?
So this is actually, I was actually back for this. If you didn't get it yet, audience, the opening was a joke. The reality was
screaming at their like.
The reality is that there was a frustration within the fan base, and maybe that doesn't amount to too much, but if Gus was still here next year, lots of things would have been different. We would have had players not on this team that were probably not retained. Fans would probably not be so gung-ho to attend those 7 home games next year. sometimes a mood or a vibe just is real. And I know that's a very youthful thing to say as the quote old man of the podcast, but the vibes
Not
were
just
off.
quote, literal.
No, yeah, the vibes were off, way off. The
Yeah.
fan base, students, fan base, everything. And we all believed that we should be doing better. And frankly, I bet Gus feels the same way too as the person leading. And whatever mix of things were going on, I really think NIL and the new era of college football is a big reason why this is happening. And honestly, Gus not able to do all the things he wants to do, which is why offensive coordinator feels good. Just put the offense together, call the plays. Someone else is bringing in the talent. Someone else is dealing with donors. Someone else is dealing with the with the billionaires kissing your athletes in meetings. Right? There's all these things that he did not have to deal with, even early COVID. So I'm excited that there is a future that looks promising. I am sad that this is the way it happened. I'm glad that we get a get out of debt free card, if you will, twice. I mean, Danny White gave us what, a $7 or $14 million bailout, if you will, on the way to Tennessee, which worked out well for him and for Heupel. But there's all these mixed emotions, and there is one emotion that we all as fans at the moment pretty much do not have, which is dread for the 2025 season. That
Yeah.
that is not an emotion within the fan base, probably within most of the donors anymore, unless we figure out we hire someone who's awful. But
Yeah,
that's
unless we
another
hire
conversation.
Alex Golish, right? So that would be
Yeah.
that would be my number one. What the heck are you doing?
Yeah, like
Uh,
if we were trying to hire like a retread from if actually Ruffin wouldn't be bad, but if we get someone from like Tarleton State, no offense to Tarleton State, we're going to talk about you later, but if that happens, okay, maybe. But there's optimism, which is positive. We're getting more money next year because we're full members. There's all these new changes happening with the NIL coming in house within the school, so there just seems to be a lot of positivity now. And that was just like the antithesis of what I heard and felt while I was over in Europe in the last couple weeks.
Yep. So UCF, Allen's ghastly pall extended over all of Europe. On, but let's dial it up a notch here. So a couple things. One, you guys mentioned NIL. One of the things that's happening now is that there are, and we'll get back to the coaching in just a second, that there are now 2 and 3 year contracts being signed. So that's good. And we'll talk about, the impact on our recruits, but surprisingly enough, a lot of them are sticking with their commitment after Malzahn's exit. We'll see how that lasts. I don't know how many of them are waiting for the coaching decision to happen, but as of right now, a lot of them had said, hey, we're with UCF regardless. So we're ride or die. And that's a positive thing. About UCF, it means that we have some pretty attractive contracts, but also maybe a little bit of that Orlando's hometown team magic will continue to be there. So, all right, so that's enough about Gus. Gus is now in the past. I do, like I said, wish him and Christy well. Christy has been nothing but positive as well for the program. They went through a lot while they were in Orlando. He mentioned it in his exit. We're all very happy that. And I think it was fortuitous for them that they had such good medical care here to shepherd them through this. And, hopefully Gus will have positive memories at some point about his time at UCF. And obviously we have positive memories about his exit at UCF as well. So let's talk a little bit about the new coach. So, you guys mentioned, a few people we don't want, but what do you guys want out of the next head coach at UCF? What kinds of things should we be looking for? Like, there's the question, pre Gus Malzahn, we hired coordinators, hot coordinators who came in and, were here. But then again, going that route, you have the situation where the college football world is different. Running a program is different. And we don't know yet. I know that UCF is preparing for taking all of this NIL stuff in-house and all of that stuff and having what's essentially a general manager in-house. So hopefully that takes that burden off of them and allows them to be a coach, in which case I think we can go that route again. If UCF is not prepared for that, then I think that we may run into a buzzsaw if we try to hire the hot G5 coordinator. Let's think about that. Would you guys prefer a coordinator or a sitting head coach or someone who has P4 experience? What are your prerequisites for what you're looking for a head coach?
I mean, for me, I kind of feel like I have three criteria. I don't really mind if they're a head coach or a coordinator. I think we've obviously more recently seen success on the field with up and coming coordinators, but I don't think that's like an end all be all. My thought is I think they have to be somewhat young. I don't know that exact age bracket, but call it like 35 to 45 years old, just because I think how much college football has changed. You see guys like Nick Saban retiring. You see guys like Gus Malzahn who are probably fed up with it, or Chip Kelly who are going to take roles where they're basically demoting themselves from a head coach to a coordinator. So I do think it takes a younger guy with energy, excitement, enthusiasm that can handle all of the stress and the 24/7 year-round job that is college football. So I think youth movement is in need, and especially especially with that, I think when you're coming off a situation like Malzahn, a 58, 59-year-old retread, you just want to get away from what didn't work immediately. Two, I think they have to be offensive minded. I think we lost our brand identity over the past few years under Malzahn. You can call it, smash mouth football, I guess, if you want to say that we are, this run heavy offense, which we were, but that might just been because that's like the only trick. We were a one trick pony and that's all we had. And we had one of the best players in college football. So I think you got to have an offensive mind. What made UCF so special in that Frost Heupel era was that offense. We saw it with a mediocre or slightly above average defense. It didn't matter. We were outscoring everyone. We were at the top of the nation in all the statistics offensively. And it was exciting. It was really fun to watch. I mean, even losses in that era, and there wasn't many, it was still fun when you're putting up 30, 40, 50 points. It's just more fun than watching a team lose 28-14 and struggling to get touchdowns in the red zone. So that would be a huge priority, number two. And number three, I don't think this is, I wouldn't eliminate someone if they don't have this, but I think they should have some sort of Power 4 experience, whether that's as a sitting head coach or they've been a coordinator or some sort of assistant coach, QB coach, whatever it is in the Power 4, because I think the demands, the financial, the finances in the Power 4, the players recruiting at that level requires something different. It doesn't mean if you don't have that experience, you can't. We've seen players or coaches, make jumps. Like we just saw the Indiana coach go from James Madison up to Indiana and go 11-1, and they're in the Big Ten championship. So it's not to say it's not possible, but I think that should be something that is considered. And those would be my top three things. I don't really care if they're currently a coordinator or a head coach. And I also don't really care I don't think UCF is anywhere as much as a stepping stone as they were when they're in the American, but I don't really care if someone is using a stepping stone because that means they succeeded here. So just rinse and repeat and do it again. So I don't have a problem if it's a guy that's looking at us, looking down the road at their next job. If they can come here and ball out, that's more important, getting back on the national radar than worrying about. I think we were just so kind of scarred from Frost and Heupel having, going to Gus Malzahn, having three coaches in a span of 5 years, that we're like, oh, we want someone to just stay here and this be their end job. Well, I don't really care about it anymore. Let's just win, baby.
Well,
So-
now it's so different though, because it's like we were in the G5 when we were worried about the coaches leaving like Frost and Heupel, and now it's so different because we're in the big boy club, if you will, and now starting next year we're going to get the full media money and kind of be able to kind of unleash all of the power of the sleeping giant that we have been for a long time, and kind of understand and feel what it's like to be part of the Power Four. And then on top of that, like we talked about this at the West Virginia game, Alan. It's like, if we do have a stepping stone coach now like that step up from UCF, from our status level, is if it's somebody that's such a hot name because he's had such good success here at UCF, obviously we're happy as a fan base because we've been crushing it. And then on top of that, like the only, step up from us at that point would be a team that was like at the level of like the true blue bloods in college football, not just some middling SEC team. We're talking about a higher level team that is perennially in the top 10, top 15 in the country. And so that would be the step up if the success scenario is as we would describe it, which in that case, we're getting a taste of the playoffs, right? Like we're getting a taste of what it's like to be in the highest level of competition that there is in late December and early January. And that's really where we want to be no matter what. And if that were to happen and our coach were to leave us for a quote unquote bigger program at that point, then we become the hottest opening in the country. It's like not even close, right? So yeah, I'm okay with whatever the aspirations of our next head coach is beyond UCF. I'm certainly okay with that, because in order to achieve those aspirations, that head coach needs to be relentless in making UCF a successful football program.
But in order to do that, Ben, I think that you have to have a strong administration, and I'm not sure that we have a strong enough administration and Terry Mohajir to say, yeah, we're going to be able to keep that continuity going and swap out coaches like that.
And I think that the last 6 months, but certainly the next 18 months, it's either that is going to be exposed, Roger. And I'm not, that's not a prediction, because I hope I would be wrong in even saying something like that. I'm saying that if there is issues there, which a lot of us have talked about it a lot. I mean, we're not the only ones that have talked about it. Like, that there's a potential that our administration on the athletic director side and who's under him and everything are not quite ready for the big time and the sophistication you need to really, truly navigate this world from an administration standpoint. And if that is the case, then that's going to be exposed, and the frustration is going to continue as a UCF fan base over the next, let's call it 18 months. I hope that, obviously all of us hope that we make the right choice, but as far as criteria, I don't have the specific criteria. I'll build upon a little bit or expand upon a little bit of some of the things that Alan said, in the sense that I would agree with you that I'd like an energetic, youthful guy. I think the maybe the age group, I would expand it a little bit further. I don't necessarily, I'm not as scared of a 50-year-old, 55-year-old coming in here, as long as they have the right energy and right direction for the program. And even some of the candidates that we're looking at, their background isn't always in it being an offensive, minded person, former offensive coordinator or whatever. Like John Summerall comes to mind as a, former defensive guy, I believe. What I would kind of modify that portion of it as far as needing to be an offensive mind, because I'm coming around on this a little bit, and maybe this is a Gus Malzahn thing, because obviously before Gus Malzahn, I would 100% wouldn't accept anything but an offensive guy. I want our teams to get back to an identity of just attacking always. And that's always been reflected in the UCF Fast, UCF Fierce brand of football that started with Scott Frost, certainly continued with Josh Heupel, but I want our team to be just like relentless again. Like somebody that just continues to come at you no matter what, that you're never going to get us to back down. And when you think that you have us beat because you're up by 14 points, like in a blink of an eye, we could be back in the game because of a turnover on defense or a couple of quick scores, whatever that may be. And I feel like that during the Gus Malzahn era has been dissipated the most and has like demoralized our fan base the most, is that it just felt like if we got down early in games, we just didn't have a chance. Where the 5 years prior to that, 6 years prior to that, it was like we didn't care. Like we always knew we had a chance in games, and I think our players knew that, which is the most important thing. And because we were always attacking, always. Whether we were on offense or defense, we were always on offense, if that makes sense. Like we were always attacking, and I'd like to get back to that identity. And I think, a combination of the things that you talked about, Alan, certainly accomplishes that. I think we probably have a broader, maybe outlook of as far as the coaching candidates that can fulfill that role. And I truly believe, you can call me, biased or black and gold glasses all you want, but I feel like our potential here is, as long as the head coach coming in understands like that we do have some challenges here right now, but we do have incredible high ceiling, incredible potential at this school, and the upside is probably higher than most programs in the country. That as long as they can ride that wave with us, I think we can have extreme success here. It kind of eventually it starts to sell itself, and the winning is going to create all of that. So if it's a defensive minded guy, I hope he hires a hot shot coordinator, and he builds a staff that is the right one, and we really get back to UCF the identity that we created, that started in 2016, 2017, and just really was riding high up until the point just shortly after we beat Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl, and it just kind of started to go a little bit downhill.
Josh?
Yeah. So what do I want to see in a coach? Easy. Deion done. That's all we need. And I'm not joking.
Wow. How the turntables have turned. When we were talking about Colorado, we were saying that Deion Sanders couldn't coach, and that's why
I never quite said that. No, that's not me. I will tell you this, and you don't pull tape, so I don't have to worry about it, whether I did or did not. The reality is and let me explain that two ways. One, a coach who brings in enough swagger, whatever you want to call it, that engages the fan base to a degree that isn't passive. Now, if you want to talk about why people want Scott Frost back, what both of Ben and Alan said, very much like that. He had a swagger about him. He had a relentless offense that would not substitute anyone for an entire drive, because they can start railroading you when they get to first down, going for 2-point conversions on the first drive. That's the type of things that I feel like the fan base wants to get back to, not because of 2017 and that season specifically. I think that's a piece of it, but it is a little bit of both what Ben and Alan are saying. So Deion and that type of persona is something we haven't quite. Gus's press conferences were the exact same coach speak for 4 years. We got no information. When you went to practice, you saw some of this stuff, but in front of cameras, pretty much cookie cutter coach speak, no excitement, nothing out of the ordinary, which I would assume from a Gus Malzahn. That's not what this fan base necessarily wants. So we have that part of what Deion is. Then you have the part of look who he surrounded himself by. Ex-NFL head coaches, right? Offensive and defensive minded people that can do the dirty work. Not saying he can't, but basically Deion is the GM role in the head coach, right? The what Andrew Luck is doing for Stanford now. He's both of those. And he comes with bona fides, right? From both his time in college football and his time as an NFL player. So maybe even baseball. So I'm not saying him. If we can get him, that should be a no-brainer. But those are the types of things I'm looking at. I'm looking at the confidence, the passion, someone who's not going to be docile in an interview, maybe can take a tough question or two and not get all M for whatever, right? Or E for everyone.
E for everyone.
Yeah.
M for mature?
M
is
for,
that where
I
you
was
were
trying
going
not
with
to do
that?
M for mature. The reality is that that's really what I'm looking for. I'm someone with that type of swagger who can take a negative comment by one of our podcast peers and not get all fussy about it, and brings in the coaching both by himself and with those they surrounded themselves with to do some amazing things. Like those are the things I'm looking for. Very much offensive minded. I'm not like Heupel where I don't care about the defense because I didn't hire that defensive coordinator, but those are the things that I'm really looking for. And from what I see on these early lists, it seems like we're in that realm.
All right. So for me, I think what you and Alan, Ben, were talking about was culture, bringing the culture back of UCF football, right? So UCF football is the upstart. It's the energy. It's the dancing on the sidelines. And, I saw that at Utah. I saw Utah players doing that. I didn't see our guys doing that. You look at Arizona State and what they're doing, and I'm, thinking about young, energetic coach. Arizona State's a perfect example of that. Not necessarily Scott Frost, but Scott Frost, while he was here, was the same thing. So I think three things I want: someone who is not a stick in the mud, who can recruit locally, right? Because we made some inroads with some big programs. Can they connect with those people and keep that going? Two, I want someone who is going to be energetic and bring energy and that culture of energy and heart to the players, right? And lastly, I'm on the fence on this, on whether there needs to be a P4 past, so to speak, whether they're coming from a P4 coordinator program or not.
Personally, I don't think it needs to have that.
Yeah, it's like third on that priority.
I just want to throw my hand up on that.
I kind of, like I said, I'm on the fence on that, right? Because one, we are not the G5 program that we were several years ago,
Sure.
right? You've got a lot of pretty highly rated recruits that are waiting in the wings, and they signed up for the mystique that is Gus Malzahn, right? And I think we've gained credibility because of that as a program. So we need to continue that. So I want someone who's going to bring up-tempo offense, the culture that we're used to, and can recruit the local area. Now, here are some of the names that are being bandied about. And let me say this about that. There's a very tight circle, and supposedly there's about 25 names that are floating around that have expressed interest, and there's probably about 15 of them that we're really exploring, which is a good thing. A lot of that includes existing P4 head coaches and some that may be peers in the same conference in the Big 12, just putting that out there. So some of the names that have been bandied about, and Alan actually put a list together of coaches as Vegas sees them, and we all know how accurate Vegas has been about UCF football lately. Scott Frost, 3-1. Kind of crazy. Jamie Chadwell, Dan Mullen, John Summerall, Tim Harris Jr. Interesting. Rich Rod, Ryan Silverfield, who's now at Memphis, Barry Odom, GJ Kinney, who has some UCF ties. He was with us. Very young coordinator or young head coach. Andy, I'm going to murder this. Kotelnicki. No.
K, there you go.
Coach K.
Coach Andy K, the PSU offensive coordinator, Charles Huff, which I don't think that's happening. Garrett Riley, Alex Golish, that better not happen. Deionsanders, and then Drinkwitz, who's the current coach at Missouri, although he's making $9 million there and is doing well. Word on the street is he's not very happy there and would be willing to take a discount to move somewhere else, and actually has a tie to our current president, Mr. Cartwright, who hired him when he was at Mizzou. So those are the names that are being bandied about. That doesn't mean that's a comprehensive name. UCF's not showing their cards. Anything that you hear is from outside noise or from agents that are either trying to leverage their current situations for more money, or are truly interested in shopping their candidate around. Now, Jamie Chadwell has been a name that has been really hot as of late as being tied with UCF. A lot of that noise is coming from outside of UCF. That's not internal UCF noise. West Virginia has also parted ways with Neil Brown this week. So they are supposedly very interested in him as well. He's a well-paid, if you don't know him, he's at Liberty. He's well-paid at Liberty. He's making P4 head coach money at Liberty, has a NIL war chest as well. The one thing about Jamie Chadwell, I went back and looked at some of his tape today. I don't really care for his offensive schemes.
It's Malzahn. It's like running. It's all running.
It is running, but there's more pitches involved. It's almost like it's a modified triple option wing T type of, and it really relies on a mobile quarterback as well. He does have some two-back sets. There's not as much eye candy before the ball is snapped. It seems that he is very, very direct about where he wants to go and set up his path for the running back. There's not really a B plan, plan B for a running back or an offensive player there. It's got a lot of short passing, which it's kind of funny. It's kind of in the passing game, kind of opposite of what we've seen out of Gus Malzahn, as far as the route tree is concerned. So it's interesting, right? It's interesting to say the least.
1/10 in passing offense, just to throw it out there.
Yeah, that's this year. What was it the last year before that?
Oh, no, I'm just talking about this year, obviously.
Yeah. So I'm not really all in on Jamie Chadwell. He's a hot name. They almost went undefeated the year before. Liberty did, which is why he was such a hot name in college football circles last year, and why he got such a nice payday from Liberty. Scott Frost, I don't want to see him, nor do I see him coming to UCF as head coach. Honestly, I think he should stay in the NFL.
Yeah.
Dan Mullen, don't want to see him either. Don't want to see a Florida retread here.
That's a tough one. My gut says
I wouldn't hate it, but I
listen.
don't love
Listen. Okay, that I'll go there. I agree, and I feel like he was given a smidgen of a raw deal with unrealistic expectations and actually did pretty good at both of his SEC stops. And I know we don't want, quote, an SEC retread, but I don't think that's as bad as it seems. And I don't think it's happening at the same time.
I don't think it's as bad as it seems either.
Yeah. But I really don't expect it to happen.
I'll say though that if we developed a lot of this list just to put the sheer names down off of Vegas odds, and we talked about it, these are Vegas odds, and he's a 4-1. The reason why he's a 4-1 though is because people know what his name is. I mean, Vegas odds aren't necessarily about the most likely scenario to happen. It's about the amount of people that are going to bet on that said thing.
Correct.
And people are going to bet on Scott Frost. People are going to bet on Dan Mullen. And that doesn't mean that they're the top candidate for the job.
There may be interest. I do think
we don't know
there's
anything right now,
though.
but yeah.
I think there is interest from Mullen's side, though. Like, I agree with what you're saying, Ben, in regards to Vegas and odds, but I don't think that name also is just like completely out of left field. Like, I do think there's some merit to it.
I wouldn't be. I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe it's just because we've gone through this now for the fourth time in however many years. It just like I don't know. Like I guess I feel like. And I imagine a lot of Knights fans share this feeling. It's just you kind of get mentally prepared for nothing is true. Everything you hear is either false or a half truth or something to misdirect. And at the end of the day, we're either going to be surprised or we're going to be like, all right, yeah, I can see that. And we're all going to get behind the coach. I mean, I don't even think, regardless of who it is, I mean, you mentioned Alex Golesh, but like even if we're like slightly disappointed with the name that is announced, hopefully this week,
Golesh would not be a slightly disappointed. That would be burn Terry's like house down in Winter Park.
Yeah, okay. Well, okay, maybe there's one. Maybe there's one. I guess all I'm trying to say is that it won't take long for us to get behind whoever it is. It'll either take a second because we're so excited about the person that's announced, such as Deion or whatever, even if we had doubts about that. Like, or it. I mean, it'll take till the opening press conference where
they'll win the press conference.
We're jacked up for the season, like they're going to win like regardless of who it is. I mean, maybe with the exception of Golesh. I mean. And I don't know if that's just because of where he's coming from or whatever. I don't necessarily. It's more of indifference. Is why I don't really share those same feelings passionately as you do, Roger. But it's more indifference on my part. But it feels like no matter who it is, has such a good opportunity to really give us a boost that it's. I'm just excited to actually learn who it is.
Yeah, I mean. I will say that, what's funny about these coaching searches, like we had no idea it was going to be Frost when it was Frost. We had no idea it was going to be Heupel.
Heupel was just completely out of left field. I mean, as far as I remember, talking about it on Nightline and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, literally as recently as last week, there were people in the dungeon and wherever that were saying it was 100% John Summerall, so much so that he was already recruiting for us, Then as recently as 4 days ago, it was GJ Kinney. There was flight trackers that were in wherever the hell, North Texas or Texas State is. And then the last couple of days, the name has been Chadwell. So it just goes to show you, like, there's very few people that probably know who it is, and not even maybe UCF, maybe one of them, whether it's Terry, I'm sure he's circling in on a few, but these names you hear, I think it's all BS until it really comes out. There may be, someone on this list that we just went over that ends up getting the job. But you look in the past week, it's been 3 different names where everyone on Twitter was saying it. Everyone was in the dungeon saying, and then guys like Brandon who are in the know will come back. Oh, well, actually it's actually not that plane flight has no one from UCF was on it. It just happens to be that a plane from Orlando flew into whereverville, Texas. So, I think we have to take it with a grain of salt.
You say whateverville? I like whateverville, Texas.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, they don't do that anymore. It's a situation where it's all done digitally anyway. So, right. I mean, there's Zoom calls and all
people
that
use
stuff.
that as like evidence is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I also think that, if if the number of 25 candidates is right, which I think it possibly could be, I think that it's one of those situations where you're not going to get, it's not G5 UCF anymore. It's going to take longer to go through and pick. And I think Terry's very aware that he doesn't get a second chance, because it's not just
100%.
for UCF. It's also his job prospects in the future anywhere else. If he gets this wrong and he strikes out again, then not only could he lose his job at UCF, but he could be relegated to the G5 again. You know what I mean?
No, I 100% agree with that. I don't want to even call it legacy, but I just can't think of another word. Like his name is on the line here. When he was hired essentially at the same time that Gus Malzahn was, it was like the appearance was, okay, they've known each other for a while. Like, Terry was able to secure the job because he was able to bring in Gus Malzahn, and everybody got behind that at the time.
Not everybody.
Now with the benefit of what's that?
Most.
Not everybody. I didn't get behind it.
Okay. Well, regardless, the most people got behind it except for the Nostradamus, that is Roger Phipps. The absolute truth, the future seer, that is Roger Phipps.
Got some lottery numbers?
Certainly doesn't remember anything that he was wrong at. That's for sure.
Goes right out.
Anyways, as I was trying to say, and now I've lost my train of thought completely, is that he was given a lot of leeway because of that. Like, I mean, he came in at a time that we were desperately looking for a head coach to lead this football program into the next step, into the Big 12. He was able to essentially bring the ball in from the 1 yard line, as we've talked about numerous times, from everything that Danny White did, and get us into the Big 12 and secure that and take some credit for that. People started to smile a little bit more about Terry Mohajir. I think there's always been doubts. There's no question about that. I think there's always been doubts. And this is one where it could either make or break him. And obviously everyone on here, regardless of any type of doubts that we have about Terry Mohajir, like, we hope to God that this makes his career. This decision that he's about to make, hopefully this week, if not next week, is going to make his career, because that means that it was a really good one for us at UCF. So,
all right.
I also don't think that Terry, in retrospect, yes, Terry made the quote unquote wrong decision, but it really wasn't. I mean, at the time, like, it seemed like a really good hire. Like, maybe it was somewhat surprising, given that I know all of, like, even Dylan Gabriel back then, all the players were calling for Jeff Lebby then. And I get it, but I don't actually think it was the wrong decision. Just in retrospect it was, but it wasn't like some guy that was like, we expected to fail miserably and like, oh, what the hell is he doing? Like, and Gus came in and won the press conference immediately. So I don't think it was a bad hire, just ended up not working out compared to like him hiring some loser that's never, done anything. And we're like, what are you doing? Like him hiring, like, I don't know, like Butch Davis or something back then, or something crazy like that. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents there.
Yeah. And let's be honest here. And I don't want to go too far backwards, but not that last year was great per se, but we're talking like this year went off the rails. The first 2 years were within reason, although in retrospect, probably the play calling and management of roster probably lost us a conference championship versus Tulane. And I still think it was probably the best decision in a time of COVID, where stability and not knowing what's going on. I don't think it was a bad hire. I do think that there is something just up in this transition to the Big 12 and nil. Like I think that is not something most people could have predicted, and it might have tanked any coach, to be honest, even someone who would have been really great for a year or two.
Stability is the right word. I mean, that was the word that came to mind when Gus was hired, is just somebody that was kind of like a foundational guy that could provide some stability in that crazy time that he did get hired. I mean, obviously it was during the early COVID days, and It was just a wild, time in college football. NIL and transfer portal were starting to ramp up. And so that time, that regardless if you like the hire or not at the time, that you couldn't help but agree that it was like a stable person to hire. And so I think that's what UCF fans were they weren't excited about. Nobody's excited about just stable, but like by the same token, like it felt like something that we could build upon as long as the things worked out in the right way. And unfortunately they didn't. So
yeah, I think the big thing with Gus Malzahn, it gave us legitimacy. I think that was the
that's a good word.
Yeah. So so I don't think anybody has to do that now, right? Because we're already into the P4.
Yes.
So
which is what makes this exciting. Like it makes it super exciting because now it just seems like a jumping off point. Like it seems like we could take off like a rocket if you get the hire right.
Yeah. So we made it about a quarter of the way through the list. So you got John Summerall, Tim Harris Jr., Rich Rod, which I think Rich is more likely to go back to West Virginia and have a homecoming there than anything else. Ryan Silverfield at Memphis. He was on the hot seat for a while. I don't like that hire. Yeah, the last couple of years he's done much better, but for a long time he was on the hot seat. Barry Odom,
no.
Interesting, but certainly not someone I would
retread.
Yep, exactly. GJ
Remind
Kenny.
me who Barry Odom is. I'm sorry.
Who's the
former Missouri coach?
Oh, the old Missouri coach. Okay.
Well, he's UNLV now, and he's done.
Okay, is that guy UNLV? Okay, UNLV. Okay, gotcha.
He's 25 and 25 at Missouri.
So you've got GJ Kinney, which you guys talked about, Texas State coach, UCF ties. Young, energetic guy, has done well at a program that moved up recently and was getting acclimated per se, but really, really raw, really young, really raw kind of guy. I mean, ultimate raw guy. I don't think it's his time yet, in my opinion. You've got the Penn State OC, Andy K, as we mentioned earlier. I don't know how I feel about Andy, to be honest with you. I don't know enough about Penn State. I hate to say that way, but I stopped paying attention to Penn State a long time ago. And that I think is more of a indication of the program that it became for a while, which is kind of mediocre, not really contending for conference championships. So I don't know too much about Andy. What do you guys know or think about that?
All I know about that is that other message boards in the universe want us to have Franklin and not this dude. So when their own fans want to give you their coach and not their offensive coordinator, that gives me some positive vibes on the potential. Just right there. So Penn State has been a pretty good top 20 team for quite some time, and they don't get over the hump, if you will, because Michigan cheats and then you have Ohio State. So, at some point, maybe if they just cheated a little bit more, they'd be fine.
Well, they're in the Big Ten championship this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And all they needed is like pretty much Michigan not to cheat. No, they're a solid. Penn State has been a solid program for a while after their after they've gotten past things that let's just not talk about. So I am excited when other people are saying there's something there. But that is something, first of all, if that gentleman becomes the head coach, we have to call him Coach Andy K. There's no way we're going to get that out. Even though Mahajer we got
that person.
If we do what we always do, like the CGM, that would be CAC. I don't think anybody wants that. So I don't know.
Oh God.
So I agree. I'm intrigued about, let's just say, if there was like a final three and he was in there, I think we would probably do a deeper dive. It's intriguing, and honestly, it sounds like we might not be the only place he might end up, and the coaching carousel
No,
as the team turns.
He's going to be a name. He's going to be a name people watch. But honestly, I haven't kept up with Penn State because of that. So Charles Huff at the Thundering Herd said he was going to come back. Was getting a look, and there were some rumors about him going to Mississippi State. There's some rumors that that isn't a marriage made in heaven, although they found success under Coach Huff. So that'd be interesting. Former Alabama acolyte, Sabanite, so to say. And, by and large, seems to be a pretty good coach. It just doesn't seem to be fitting in well there at Marshall.
And aren't they also in a conference championship too in the Sun Belt for like the first time or something like that? I mean, I think they're doing pretty good too.
They are doing really well.
Yeah,
but,
and quick side note: Penn State is recently released. Penn State is number 3 in the CFP, so I think they're doing okay.
Who?
Penn State is, yeah.
Penn State.
He missed the joke. All right. Garrett Riley.
Mike Jones.
Don't know much about him. Alex Golish is on this list and shouldn't be, because there's there's no way on God's green pasture
Terry would be fired
that Alex Golish is going to get the UCF head coaching job, especially after he talked smack on his exit. Deion Sanders. This one's interesting. I don't think it has legs, but I could see a possibility. And the scenario is there that Deion has talked about getting back into Florida. FSU owes their current head coach somewhere in the neighborhood of like $65 million if they let him go. So it's not going to be FSU, his alma mater. They had some issues way back when, but I think those are Miami isn't going anywhere. UF, had they gotten rid of their current coach,
Napier,
maybe. So really, if he wants to get back into Florida after his son goes to the draft, because the timing is kind of coincidental there, and he wants to make a change, there may be some interest there. And when you're talking about brash culture fit, that's definitely Deion Sanders, and he's been recruiting Florida pretty heavily. So there'd be a lot of Florida players that would jump on that bandwagon. In fact, Christian Hudson, who was a 4-star who was committed to us early, and then after the Colorado game, went to Colorado. I could see him coming back to UCF as well. So it's, that would be, honestly, that wouldn't be a bad move for UCF from a publicity perspective. I just don't know how well he can put together a team if his son and some of the other superstar players on his team leave.
Well, that's the biggest question mark, right? Like, I mean, he has done well with the Colorado football program. They're obviously in a great spot right now, but the biggest question mark is, can he get it done without every single game that he has had at Colorado and prior stop before that? Like, you've had the 2 best players on the football field on your sideline, like on your team. And when you have that and then all of a sudden that goes away, it's just a question mark of, can you replace those guys? Can you, is it you as a head coach, or, how much of that is having the special talent that is Travis Hunter, playing both sides of the ball and making plays all over the field. And obviously, the stabilizing force who is your son at quarterback. And I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying that is a question in general about Deion Sanders. Is how good is he? It's the Belichick or Brady type, scenario as far as success that he's had so far. I think he has provided obviously he's adored by the media or loved or hated by the media. He's talked about by the media, gets a ton of, swagger for, gets a ton of publicity for his team. for his players. Appears at times to, truly love his players and care about his players. And then at other times you hear like rumors and stories of mistreatment of certain, players and all that. So there's a little bit of a mixed bag there. And if you start to lose, a lot of that negativity starts to come out. And so we haven't seen that necessarily yet in Deion Sanders' relatively young head coaching career so far. And so we would hope that UCF, and it should for Deion Sanders, be viewed as a step up and a direction in his career that he really truly wants to go at. If he were to be the next UCF head coach, I would embrace it. I think it would be it's probably the biggest splash hire, as we have said, of the names on the list. But it would be an interesting roller coaster. We'd have to hold on tight to see if it really works out for us, because personality like that, when things start to chip away, if that were to happen, then it could get explosive in the other direction really quick.
Yeah, it's I agree with everything you said there. I look at it as, Colorado rolled the dice because they needed something. They were not doing well for a long time. Their fan base had been apathetic for a long time. Their season tickets were down, etc. That's not UCF. So, that's the high risk, high reward kind of hire there, because he will bring fans, he will bring money, he will bring recruits, he will bring media. Question is, will he bring wins without two of his top players? And I'm not sure of that, although I will say, and we said this post Colorado, he outcoached Gus Malzahn that game.
100%. I agree with that. Yep.
So, all right, Eli. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because I don't want to necessarily breeze over it. We mentioned his name a couple times, but I would be, just personally, I just want to say I'd be excited if it was GJ Kenny. And one of the reasons I was waiting for that, one of the reasons why I would be excited about it, because he seems like a coach, perception wise, that is going to get hired by a big name program and going to be the head coach of a higher level program very soon. And I view that as a UCF fan, as a UCF guy, I view that as, why not us? Why not now? I don't want to look up 2 years from now and he gets hired as, at a different program, and all of a sudden that program starts to take off and he looks like a superstar hire. I'd like that to be us. And so he feels like that possibility to me. And just on hope alone, and just on kind of, I don't know, it's like a gut feeling when it comes to GJ Kenny. I just feel like he has that type of ceiling and potential that I would be super excited if he's that guy. He from everything that I hear, even this past week, of like national reporters, when they talk about GJ Kenny, it just seems like it's inevitable that he is going to run a higher level program than where he's at right now. And so I'll take the hot name, or I'll take the up and comer at our school and kind of keep those vibes at our school over another. And that's just my thought on GJ Kenny.
I'd like to add that. I mean, at all the names on the list, Deion is by far the splashiest, but when you talk about realistic and something that doesn't feel like a pipe dream, GJ Kenny, I do like the youth, the ties to UCF, the offensive mindset. And if you've looked, there's been several current UCF players. Granted, they did play for him, but it does show that he connected with them well. You had Ricky Barber. I mean, these are guys that are outgoing too, like, meaning they're leaving UCF because they're graduating. So they really don't have a reason necessarily to call for a certain coach, because they are going to be in the NFL or wherever it is their life is taking them. And I saw several what will be now former players that were on the team this year calling for GJ Kenny. And I don't, we saw the same thing with Lebby, and I don't know if Lebby would have done well here, but I think there is something to say when current players are calling for a coach that it probably has some merit. Yeah, of course, now you're seeing 2017 players call for Scott Frost, but but GJ Kinney is a current head coach. So I think there is some merit to it. So I think I don't think it would be this quote unquote sexiest hire in the media and all that, but I think it would be something. I think it is something worth considering, and I would be fairly excited for that hire.
All right, so I'm going to get to this last name, and then I'm going to ask you guys for your top 3 off the list. So if you're play the AD for a day, Eli Drinkowitz is the last one, and that we'll talk about. Like I said, current sitting Mizzou head coach, doing pretty well there. Was a hot name for a while. Younger guy, kind of the young nerdy type that you kind of see that are becoming like head coaches. So not happy in his current situation, so maybe a possibility as well. So if you're Terry and he's at all possibility, you're going to make that call. So all right, well, let's do this rapid fire. We've kind of talked a lot about these guys. So Ben, since you're in the top right hand corner, top 3 names off that list that you would make a call as an AD.
I'll say no particular order just to hedge my bets, but I'll say John Summerall, GJ Kinney, and Deion are my 3.
All right. Alan, what about you?
I will go with a specific order. I'd like John Summerall, number 1, GJ Kinney, number 2. And do they have to be on this list, or could they be off the list?
Well, I mean, if it's someone that's being talked about, then
it was not necessarily someone talked about, but Will Stein, the Oregon offensive coordinator, I think would be really, really exciting. And he's been talked about in coaching circles as the next guy that's going to get a head coaching position. So I would say him. If not him, then third, I would go with the Penn State offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and we've done okay with Oregon offensive coordinators in the past. So I would say, unrealistically, but I'd love it. I no order. Deion Sanders. I actually Drinkowitz is on there too. I think it's unrealistic, but I think it's up there too. And I will, in the same vein as Alan, but the other side, Coach Andy Kay. I actually am really intrigued about that. The more that I read about it, I need to dig a little deeper, but it's pretty intriguing, and I don't think it's going to happen, and probably some out of the blue hire will probably happen, but
Agreed.
There are a lot of people on this list that I wouldn't feel bad about, except for like Alex Golish. No offense, Coach Golish, but like there's some people we should not be on this campus in this list at all.
Yeah, the rambling Russian we can keep off of this. So let's.
Is that his nickname?
No, I'm just making it up on the fly. See, I can be funny at times. See, you big smile.
You have to say it, Roger.
Well,
I just think that'd be great if that's what USF fans call him. That'd be so funny.
That's what I'm calling him, the rambling Russian.
Because you can tell they're starting to hate him, so that'd be a great nickname.
I mean, they got to 6-6. At least they're going to a bowl game, right?
They're going to the Hawaii Bowl, actually.
They can't be that bad. That's already.
Well, look at who they won against. All right. So again, for me, the top 3 on that list, if I were to look at this, and I'm going to say with an asterisk for reasonable, John Summerall, I'm with Alan on that. My number 1. I think he has the right combination of all the things that we talked about. Number 2, Andy K would probably be my number 2.
Coach K's protege.
Yes. The CAC. All right. And then for me, honestly, if he is realistic, and I don't know if he is or not, I would love Eli Drinkowitz here. I think he would absolutely tear it up. He's a guy that made Missouri good again, and that's tough to do there. And really cerebral guy, knows how to run a team and a great schemer. So those would be my top three.
Wouldn't it be kind of cool to take a current SEC coach
It'd be
from
really
them?
cool.
Like that'd be kind of fun. Like he didn't get fired. He just he just decided he wanted UCF more than
he drank the Kool-Aid and came here, right?
That's kind of fun. That would be cool. That would be cool.
Yeah, exactly. So those are my top three. But honestly, none of us have any idea. And you noticed I left Jamie Chadwell off of that list. I do not like his offensive schemes at all. Like, I do not like the way he sets up his scheme. I like the fact that he runs a two-back set at times, but I don't like what he does with it. He tries to do misdirection, and the misdirection just isn't good. I'm not all in on Jamie Chadwell. Maybe I'll eat my words, but I said the same thing about Gus Malzahn, and for different reasons. But basically, SEC retread, I did not want that for our program because of the culture. And I just don't see Jamie Chadwell as the guy here. Okay. As far as Frost is concerned, no on Frost. If Trey were here, he'd be screaming at the top of his lungs. He did that
one
in
of
the
those
chat.
former players that Alan mentioned that are
Yep.
that are really excited for Frost. So I mean, it is what it is. It's
Understandable.
It's an inside. He knows him better than anybody here. That's for sure.
I still think he's trying to go for some sort of on-field access.
He's pretty comfortable in his current career, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sure the on-field access. Yeah, definitely trying to get that.
All right. So one last question on this topic before we kind of move on. So the current staff of coaches that we have, we've got some pretty good recruiters. So the question to you guys is, are there any assistant coaches that you would want to keep on staff?
Kenny Martin, done.
Kenny Martin, yeah.
Kenny Martin. I don't know what Cam popped out, but yeah, 100%. That's it.
All right. Alan?
Well, I think there's more than Kenny. Yeah, Martin is definitely one.
100%.
I mean, I don't know if it's realistic, but like, I think it's also situational. Like if we did have a Jamie Chadwell, one of the biggest, downsides of him is that he doesn't have any Florida ties, right? He's never coached here. He doesn't have the pipeline. I'd love to keep like a Tim Harris Jr. who has the most Florida ties. I don't think he's going to stay, but I personally think Tim Harris would be someone I'd absolutely want to keep on the offensive side of the ball with all of his South Florida recruiting. Obviously Martin. And then I think there's then the linebacker coach, or is that Martin? Or is he the
wasn't Addison Williams on linebackers the when he
what was that?
Didn't Addison Williams take over linebackers when
he did when he became defensive coordinator? Before that, he was defensive backs coach.
So for me, it'd be Martin. It would be Tim Harris, and then I mean, now that you bring up Addison Williams, I mean, I don't think he would take a second demotion, but it would be nice to keep him because he's widely considered someone that's a rising kind of coach, and clearly he's able to recruit. But I think we've seen in most transitions that at most maybe one coach is kept. And then we're not even talking about Sean Beckton, which I mean, just for pure nostalgia.
Well, Sean Beckton, that goes without saying. I think that man should stay around the UCF program as long as he wants.
But I mean, my top priority would be Tim Harris. I don't think there's any other coach on the current UCF staff that has anywhere near as much South Florida ties as he does. And that that was something that we got away from for a long time. And I'd like to keep that pipeline open.
So it's right on the tip of my tongue, but Kenny Ingram is the defensive ends coach. So those two guys together is Kenny Martin, defensive tackles. Kenny Ingram, defensive ends. It's probably the reason why I couldn't think of, because they're both Kennys. But both of those guys together, they're not only good defensive line coaches, but they are really good recruiters. And I know that from recruits they're currently being recruited by UCF. So yeah, I wouldn't mind keeping both of the Kennys.
So Ben is all in on the letter Kenny. All right. So I think to
be fair,
I think I agree on the Kennys. Honestly, I think that's a great idea from a recruiting perspective. I think, especially if you bring even someone like GJ Kinney, who was here but wasn't here very long. He has more Texas ties than anything else from a recruiting perspective. So I think that has to be a consideration for whoever comes on board and ends up taking the job. If you want those Florida ties, that's one of the big strengths that we've had. We're not quite Miami level, who, by the way, did not win again last week. So that's awesome.
Classic Miami.
Classic Miami. So not the champions of the ACC yet again. What is this, like the 25th year in a row or something like that?
I think they've only made the game once or twice, maybe.
Yeah.
Poverty program.
Yeah. So, so at the end of the day, I think the letter's Kenny, and I like the Tim Harris call out too, but I don't think he would stay either.
I'd have to
given the volatility of his.
You got to think though, that would, if he actually were, now I'm not saying that he's even being considered, but I'm saying, like, you got to think the fan base wouldn't be too happy if he was actually hired as the head coach, though.
No,
because it just doesn't seem like that propels our
program forward at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. So yeah,
we're not the teething program of the P4. We
don't need to search within with this one. We need somebody that's going to come in and shake things up. All
right, so let's go ahead and pivot. It's a long and exhaustive discussion about things we can't tell you for sure one way or the other, but you got our opinions anyway. So we'll touch on Utah real quick before we pivot to hoops, which is a team who is on a 2-game winning streak. So week 14, we talked about Utah and that game. RJ Harvey breaks the all-time TD record, surpassing Kevin Smith. We've talked about whether he's the GOAT or not. He's pretty well up there. So a lot of people are still on the Kevin Smith train, but RJ Harvey has deserved and earned his spot in the pantheon of UCF running backs. So, super excited for him. At this stage, let's just talk about it real quick. What we saw in the game, I think I tweeted, this was the most pathetic offensive performance that I've seen since 2015. I mean, seriously. We outgained. We did our thing where we outgained our opponent, beat them in every statistical category, but didn't win the game. And the crazy thing is, 2 pick sixes in this game, and the difference was what?
14 points.
Exactly. So neither team offensively did very much. We did a lot more in moving the ball. We just did what we did all season long. Mm-hmm. The thing that was extremely frustrating for me in this game, and Ben, you touched on it earlier, I could not understand the logic behind switching out Dylan Risk and then bringing him in for a third down to try to convert. The EJ Colson thing, especially since he announced immediately after the game that he was leaving. The coaching staff had to know that. There had to be some sort of indication that he was going to do that. And if that was the case, then why play him at all? Mm-hmm. That made no sense to me whatsoever. Yes, Dylan Riss wasn't doing much. He couldn't get out of his own head. All night long, I was at the game. He looked slow in his reads and getting the ball out. He was just late. And I hadn't seen that from him all season. And he got hit pretty hard. Oh, let's not talk about the helmet to helmet that wasn't a helmet to helmet. The helmet to the face.
Third play of the game or whatever.
The third play of the game that wasn't a helmet to helmet, which that completely disrupted us again, just like the game before last. It was almost comical by the second half. And it's funny because I was standing there with a Utah fan who was beside me in the cabana, and we had started talking, and they were apathetic, and they were throwing their team under the bus as much as our, and so it was like two apathetic team fan bases that are literally in the Who Sucks Worst Bowl at the end of the season on Fox.
I know.
On Fox. And that was a terrible football game to watch. So whoever you were rooting for in that game, it was terrible. I don't know what happened to us offensively. We were out of sync, but I can tell you this. There's no way. Either you yank Dylan Risk and you take him out for series to let him get his head right. He got hit pretty hard when his helmet flew off in the game, and he was rattled after that. But that was not the Dylan Risk we're used to. You pull him out, you set him for a couple of series, and then send him back out. You don't put him out there, have him gain some yards, and then put him back, take him out for second down, and then throw him back in for third down. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever and was extremely frustrating. And if you're a quarterback, you can't get in a rhythm if that's happening. So as bad as that play was at the quarterback position, you made it worse by doing what you did. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I said it before we started recording tonight, and you referenced it, but it's just to me, with the benefit of hindsight, knowing what happened basically less than 24 hours after that, that game ended, and then knowing that, or at least hearing that, there was a lot of talks that were happening or decisions made after the West Virginia game the week before. It just, with the benefit of hindsight, it just looked like sabotage. I mean, on Gus Malzahn's part, like it was baffling decisions on when to take Risk out of the game. And where he would, I remember one play specifically because I was like blowing up our group chat about it. Like I was just so perplexed. It was in the second quarter, like where, Dylan Risk on a third down play scrambles to his right and throws a dime, and I think it was to Kobe Hudson, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been Jacoby Jones, but just throws a great pass and puts it on the money for the first down. And
who, by the way, had 4 drops. Kobe.
Yeah,
Hudson.
I mean, he didn't get help. It didn't get help from his receivers. I mean, Pittman is probably the only star of that group that night. But he threw a great pass. He got the first down converted, and we're it seems like we got a little momentum, and he puts in Ja'Cory Brown for first and second down, where there was just run plays, a few yards in a cloud of dust, and all of a sudden he gets thrown back in there for third down when it's 3rd and 6, and he's forced to throw under duress again, and he doesn't convert, and then he gets chewed out by Gus Malzahn coming off on the sideline. And it's just like, what do you expect the young guy to do? Like, it's just a weird, like some of the decisions of not only taking him out the rest of the game when you put in E.J. Colson, like when we saw that happen, we were like, what's going on here? But in the first half in particular, you just took him out. Like every time he made a decent momentum play, he was yanked out of the game. And it just, again, with the benefit of hindsight, it looked like sabotage. It looked like he was ready to go, and he was just kind of blowing this thing up, and he was just like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what would stick. And maybe even when it comes to a guy like E.J. Colson, or maybe even Ja'Cory Brown, he was doing a little bit of recruiting there because he knew that Dylan wasn't the guy that he was going to bring to Florida State if that opportunity presented himself. And so maybe he never wanted Dylan to be a quarterback. We knew that. The only reason why Dylan got his chance is because, or at least allegedly, the only reason why he got his chance is because EJ didn't want to go in the game in that one game. And so who knows? I mean, it just looked like sabotage. It looked like he didn't give a rip what happened in that game, and then the frustration boiling over. You see the whole hand gesture that got all this play on social media It ironically didn't get much play that Dylan Risk did a similar hand gesture before that when he was coming off the field. It might have been the play I was describing when he's coming off the field and Gus Malzahn's chewing him out and he just has enough. He just wants to talk to Tim Harris and that's it. And I could say
supposedly the wider shot was him waving off another staff member, not Dylan Risk.
Okay. I'm talking about earlier was Dylan Risk kind of appeared to wave off Gus Malzahn prior to him doing that. But regardless of what that was on the sideline, it was bad optics all around. It was nauseating to watch as a UCF fan. And it's something that it was just a horrible but typical way to end this season and era that we've experienced that really has come to a head this season under Gus Malzahn.
All right. Well, I think that's all we really want to say about the Utah game. Congratulations to RJ Harvey on his new status within the pantheon of UCF football. He will be sorely missed. It sucks that he went out on a loss, especially a loss like that. But he certainly captured the hearts of the Knight faithful and will not be forgotten. All right, so players who have entered the portal since Gus left: Marcellus Marshall, Reese Atkins, Caden Kittler, interesting, Chasen Johnson, Derek LeBlanc, EJ, obviously, we talked about already, Cam Moore, both of the Henderson twins, and that's pretty much it. So actually less than I thought. The big player that I wanted to make sure we held on to was Randy Pittman. I think he is a superstar in the making. So I think, holding on to him offensively, and then obviously some of the younger guys that we had that are superstars in the making. I think Bradell Richardson being one of them. Holding on to guys like that, I think, are the key. Well, John Walker is going to be interesting. I don't know if we're going to hold on to him or not. And I
don't either, but at least now we have, as of now.
Well, any of the names that you just mentioned are as of now anyways, because it could change any minute.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's another thing for Terry to consider. If he brings in a coach that nobody believes in, that could change too, right? But I think for me, I was pleasantly surprised with the amount of people that stayed. There were rumors beforehand, and Ben, you alluded to this as well, that there were a lot of people that were set to transfer if Gus Malzahn stayed, and or not commit if Gus Malzahn stayed. So I appreciate those guys in an era such as this, those that do stay, those that are sticking with their commitment. The fact that we've made we've had a lot of conversation about in this era that guys are looking out for themselves. They don't care about the school. It's just the payday. Guys like that are sticking to either their commitment and or with the program. I think that's huge statements, and they deserve our support for doing that. So make sure you're being vocal around that as well. Right now, guys like Tony Johnson, Tavion Swint from the recruiting classes, which are big names, and there are others that have come out and affirmed their 100% commitment to UCF, which isn't quite as good as 1,000% commitment, but we will take it.
At this point, yeah.
All right. Let's go ahead and pivot. We're going to skip right over the Big 12 scores this week because we don't care. Other than Arizona State going to the championship game.
Roger, would you mind if I just read the quote from Tony Williams? I thought this was a really cool quote, something that was pretty cool of an 18-year-old. His quote on Twitter when he was reaffirming, after all this Gus Malzahn news was, NFL draft picks can't choose their coaches. With that being said, I'm staying committed to UCF. I'm ready to put on for Orlando. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. That was good. It's true. I mean, it's
Right.
let's not even get into that. It is true, and I love that type. That's the type of swagger or riz or whatever you want to call it these days. These Utes. That's the type of energy I want from the head coach, let alone the recruits who want to make it to the
What?
big.
I think the big thing it says to me is that some of that Orlando's hometown team inertia is sticking, and it also means that we are emerging a big enough program within recruiting circles that that folks are committing to the program and the school and not necessarily the head coach. So I think that's a step forward in the right direction, especially in this era. All right, so let's go ahead and pivot. All right, you guys sound super excited. Let's talk a little bit about UCF hoops. So UCF hoops had a setback with LSU that kind of drove me nuts watching that game. But had a setback there, not a step back because they couldn't hit the three. But they had a setback, and UCF does go 2-0. They beat Milwaukee 84-76 and California Baptist 74-59, and are now 6-2 on the season. Now, you hear that and you're like, okay, it's Milwaukee, whoever, and California Baptist, whoever. But both of those teams are expected to compete for their conference championship and their NCAA bid, and played really, really well. Even the non-power teams that we've been playing have been the top of their league. So Johnny Dawkins did set up a thing, and he made an interesting comment. When it comes to scheduling for basketball, it's a little bit different than it is for football because it isn't so far in advance. And Johnny made an interesting comment where he said, he was asked, did you purposefully schedule all these guys for the different systems that you saw? And he said what he does is he goes and he looks at the different systems in the Big 12. He tries to find analogs to that in other schools for out of conference and brings those folks in so that we've seen it and played against it before. So I thought that was really, really interesting and a little bit of insight into the level of thinking that goes into that out of conference and into the strategy when it comes to playing in the Big 12. So Ben, it looks like you have something to say, so I'm gonna.
No, I just wanted to add to that because it's a great point. Because what we saw a great example of that this week, like with Milwaukee, with playing Milwaukee, they had 2 7-footers. They have a huge, they're a large, big team in the front court, and so we had to deal with that from a rebounding perspective. Had to make sure that we were able to handle that well and be able to deal with that type of size. And then you saw the kind of the flip side of that, a more small ball team in California Baptist that we played later in the week. And we kind of excelled against that team. We kind of were able to pull away for the first time in the second half and really blow a team out, which was good to see, to us to take that step forward, kind of take advantage of the the benefit or the assets that we have on our team. So it was interesting just that you said that. I just wanted to comment real quick because you almost saw that this week alone.
Oh yeah,
that you saw 2 different styles. One that has a bigger, taller front court, similar to what you see in Kansas and some other schools in the Big 12, and then that fast small ball team that still happens to rebound well and plays with energy, like Houston, we see a little bit like Iowa State. So that style of the way that Johnny has put together this non-conference schedule has been really interesting because it has not been about names, that's for sure. Like we get that. Like we don't know who these schools are or even
where they are
located. If California wasn't in CBU's name, I wouldn't know where they were, at least what state they're in. But that being said, I think when you kind of look at those teams and how they're made up, it appears that that we're getting some of the looks and some of the matchups that are preparing us for a tough Big 12 schedule, which, as
So-
we know, is going to be
So
crazy.
some trends through the out of conference up to this point that I'm kind of seeing for our team as far as growth is concerned, right? So we have been working on, and we have a new offensive coach that we brought in. So we've seen a lot more emphasis on trying to get pick and rolls. And we're seeing some success both with Jokus and Tiem and or Chiem is how you say it. And trying to do that. So that's really exciting because we haven't seen pick and rolls in a really long time, probably since Taco Fall was here to be used offensively. You mentioned the rebounding. That's an area of opportunity for us as far as getting better at that. I mean, against CBU, they had a possession where they had six shots.
That was so bad. I was there live. It was bad.
You saw that in the first half, right? And then the second half, that completely changed. You saw DJ, instead of being up around the arc, he was in the paint fighting for rebounds. And it just showed what the difference is if you do that. DJ, his 3-ball shot was off for one game, but it was, in the second half, he started lighting up. He's just got that levity and that senior presence that you like to see, bringing the ball up the court. Taylor Hendricks surprised me. Hadn't seen very much of Taylor Hendricks. Tyler Hendricks. Tyler Hendricks. Sorry. Tyler Hendricks.
I was going to say Tyler came in to guard number 1 from California Baptist. That's exactly what he came in for, because that man was a menace the entire game.
He was fast.
He was fast and elusive fast. It's not running for purpose, not running just to outrun you. And Tyler came in for that defensive end and did pretty good during that time there.
He's been getting run the last 2 games, and he's been out for quite a long time because of injuries, unfortunately for him, back-to-back years with injuries. But he looked really good, and he fit in there and provided a spark. Chiem looked much better in the second half as far as boxing out and doing things like that. That's been an issue for him where he's learning how to do that. And he played a lot smarter in the low post, setting himself up for rebounds and being a force that he can be with his height. So I'm liking that. And I'm also liking the, you didn't see it in the first half in CBU, but you saw it in the second half and what you've seen throughout the season, which is a lot more slashing. You see guys moving. Ivy Curry can be lazy at times. You watch him and he's just kind of like, okay. And they're telling him, hey, go, cut through the paint or do whatever, get some movement going. But you see that on court coaching going on, and you're seeing a lot more guys with backdoor passes, no look passes, slashes, things like that, which is really, really exciting and a higher level of basketball offensively than what we've seen out of Johnny Dawkins' team. So I love the way that our offensive game is evolving, and it gives me a lot of hope as we get through this out of conference schedule that we've got a few more tune-up games that are going to get us ready for those situational basketball games. And that's really, a big part of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, the construction of this team is really fascinating because each of these players brings like something special to the table. We were saying on our group chat during the CBU game how like Rokas, is it Josius? How do you say his last name? Josius, I believe. When he comes off the bench, like his strength is he is a really good high post passer. Like he's a very good high post passer. He's very savvy with the basketball on the offensive end. So he makes the right plays. He's a very good passer. And he can get you some rebounds. And he's, as Josh pointed out in our group chat, he is a liability on defense right now.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of that from the starting lineup is a player that is still supposed to be in who you've already mentioned, it was still supposed to be a senior year in high school, is Chiem. I mean, I think we can talk about his raw ability all day long as far as like his potential and what he needs to work on and continue to grow at. And it just seems like all of that is just going to fall into place because he's that special of a talent, and he has that high of a ceiling. But one of the things that I get so excited about how he fits into this team is, and it goes a little bit unnoticed unless you're like really locked in and you're paying attention to it. It's like when he's in the game, our defensive set is just so elevated. Like it's not, I mean, it's the difference between him being on the bench and in the game is just, it is really, really a quite the contrast as far as our defensive ability goes. And one of the reasons why that is because we can switch we could switch any ball screen when Chiem is in the game. We can't do that when other centers are in the game. And that's not a knock on those other centers. It's just something that he provides that he's only going to continue to get better at. His defensive instincts are so solid, but he's only going to improve as the game starts to slow down for him. So his shot blocking ability, his ability to, cover ball screens and hedge and recover, and our ability as a team to be able to switch five when he's in the game, it brings us to another level. That I think that's his biggest role that he provides. And then and just to mention somebody that hasn't been talked about yet, you got a guy like Keyshawn Hall that's your like do everything guy, right? Like he just has the ability to just get you that big rebound that you need in a game, or get you that big steal, or whatever you need done. He can knock it down from three, but his strength is getting downhill and using that, kind of big guard body of his just to, finish at the basket through contact. So he's a special player as well. I love the way that this team was constructed this year, and you see the forming of chemistry early on, which is exciting. And I continue to say, because people are worried about it, I think when Jalen Sellers enters this lineup, it's just going to add to it. It's not going to disrupt the chemistry. Maybe I'm just being overly optimistic to that, but I think you add Jalen Sellers to this backcourt, and then eventually Mikey Williams, I guess, as long as he gets into the shape that he needs to be, and he's locking in the way he needs to be defensively, and he's showing them what he needs to do in practice. But you add those two players, but in particular Jalen Sellers. Our backcourt with Darius Johnson, with Juice Curry, and you got Nils coming off the bench. You got a lot of guys that can play ball. I think he just elevates that to such a dynamic backcourt that it's something potentially dangerous to deal with.
Nils has upped his game tremendously.
Yes. Yeah.
He's not as much of a liability with ball handling anymore. He sees the floor a lot better. He's making extra passes. Chiem, it was interesting against CBU. He got switched on someone who was much faster and a matchup problem, and he stayed there and defended him and did well. The other thing that I think, going back to your other point about how he affects the defense as he matures, and you're seeing some of it now, one of the issues that we have against teams, especially that are hot from the beyond the arc, is that our help defense, when we pull guys into the paint for help defense, teams have identified this as a problem for us, is we aren't getting back fast enough on the at the 3-point line. So they're making that extra pass and getting an open look. And I think with Chiem, as he starts to learn how to block out, as starts to move guys out of the paint in the low post, I think that allows us to keep those guys without having to switch with that help on that help defense, and takes that opportunity away. And that's the biggest place where teams have hurt us is in the 3-point line, because we've got guys who can play solid defense. Benny Williams, we didn't talk about him. He's a good rebounding threat. He's also can shoot a three. And he moves, and he can drive the paint too. he moves for his size very fluidly. So, a lot of people talk about him with CJ Walker. CJ Walker, one, unfortunately was hurt quite a bit. Two, when he did come back, he did not seem as fluid with the ball. He seemed less in control of his body. Had huge athletic prowess. Man could jump out of the gym, but just didn't seem like he had the control while he was dribbling the ball. Whereas Benny Williams, I'm not worried about him turning the ball over. So it's really interesting. We've talked about a lot of different names, but that just goes to the depth of what this team is and the ability. We're talking about playing all these different teams. It gives Johnny the opportunity to see who works well in what schemes, against different offenses. But it also kind of proves that, hey, we can figure all this stuff out. And instead of having just one or two different things that we're hanging our hat on, we figured all this out before we get into conference play. And I think that's going to frustrate some teams as we get into the Big 12.
Yeah, I think we have the type of lineup that matches up well with certain teams. And we've proven in the non-conference so far that we can win in different ways. And so as we continue to grow, hopefully continue to develop and grow, leading up to, New Year's Eve when we start, tip off the conference schedule. Hopefully we continue to build upon that and be ready to go, when we get into this conference. Cause that was the other thing I texted you guys. It's just wild to see, if you look at January, that entire month of January is just, it's insane to look at what that schedule is. And I'll rattle it off real quick. And I know we got to get going, but I'll just rattle it off real quick. Because January 5th, number 1 in the nation, Kansas comes back to UCF in a game that they want to win. Colorado, who was off to a great start. They were a tournament team, I believe Sweet 16 last year. Arizona, there we go, January 11th at Arizona. Then it's at Arizona State. Both of those teams are off to great starts this year. Then you got a top 20 team at Houston, or in Houston, coming into our arena January 18th. You got number 5 or number 6 in the nation, Iowa State. Where you have to travel after Houston at home. We have to travel to a top 5 team in the country at Iowa State. And then we have TCU to finish out back at home. And then we have to travel to Lawrence, Kansas to play the number 1 team right now in the country to finish out the month of January. So, and oh, by the way, we start out February 1st with BYU at home, who has arguably the number 1 overall pick in upcoming draft. If it's not Cooper Flagg, it's going to be their top player at BYU. So it's a gauntlet, and you'll hear me say that word a billion times over the next few weeks. But it's going to be crazy, and hopefully we get ourselves prepared over these last few non-conference games, and we continue to keep this rolling in the conference.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting to see, and I think as good as the Big 12 is, I think that UCF is going to have a team to compete there, and I think we are getting a little bit of respect on our name. It'd be great if we would have won against LSU, which we should have. Right. But outside of that, I think that this team is going to be one that is a lot of fun to watch, and is a team that's going to go a long way in the Big 12 conference. So it'll be an exciting season. We'll never feel like we're out of any of these games. All right. Let's go ahead and pivot. All right. Let's pivot and get into a little bit of a listener love. The comments were active again this week. So thank you so much to those of you that are participating, as we really do appreciate you guys jumping in here and being part of the conversation. So first up, we've got Eric Edwards, 3055. Again, Eric Edwards was involved last week. We appreciate it. He says most UCF fans living in the past and expecting every season to be like 2016 and 2017, but Roger is only going back to 2022. And that was a comment about my faux pas with the Keene debate on the Mikey Keene quarterback, because I said Mikey Keene by mistake, but love it. Keep that coming, Eric. And please do poke fun at me when I make mistakes. My response to that was, LOL, still stuck in the great Keene debate. We appreciate you and happy Thanksgiving. Next on the list, we've got Pitt Stoner, 1974, frequent contributor and appreciated. No one cares about the other sports. They don't make money. My response to that, to some degree, we do care. They just haven't had anything to write home about. Looking forward to hoops baseball, and we will have Rich Wallace back again, as well as softball. And I think that Alan's trying to say something, but he's
I'm saying, so they're like me, sports that other sports that we don't care, or I don't care about.
So Pitt Stoner responds back the following day. He says, men's basketball, yes, the others lose money pretty much everywhere every year. That's why not a lot of emphasis on them. I think we've had a lot of success in the other sports for a long period of time, whether it be volleyball, whether it be softball, whether it be any of the other sports that have brought a lot of notoriety to the school. And I think there was a lot of awareness. It's just the rest of them have been pitiful. And not to the level that they have been. Although we may have to start talking about women's basketball here soon. We don't really know what we have there. They're looking good. Some of the players that are now playing for us were high-level transfers and high-level recruits. We just don't know how good the other teams are that they're playing because, quite frankly, it's a big question mark. All right. Pitt Stoner 1974 says, did you say Brown was battling Cam Ward for starter at Miami? He was the 5th string and had no chance. They paid Ward way more than we paid KJ. And my response to that was, it came across that way. I should have said expected to compete for the starting position until Cam blew everyone away. Thank you as always for listening and happy Thanksgiving. And at the time when he transferred, he was expected to compete for the starting job at Miami, and then dipped out once it became pretty clear that it was going to be Cam all the way. All right, Josh, were you going to say something? It looked like you were, but then now it doesn't. So, all right. All right. So thank you again to everybody who is participating. Make sure to tweet at us. Make sure to comment on the threads. Tell your friends, tell them to follow, and be part of the community. One of the things we've been talking about, which I think now that we're into the off season and after recruiting that we're going to dig into, is we want to do a little bit more engagement with our fans. So we were thinking about having a fan or a listener, fan is really the wrong word, a listener, be a more direct part of the conversation and maybe recording with us during the episodes during the off season. So if you're interested in doing that, please leave your name in the comments, give us a shout or on Twitter, and we'll see if we can set something up for you to be part of the show. So thank you so much to all of you. You are the reason why we do this. And with that being said, let's move on to Alan's oxymoronic stat of the week. Alan, do you have an oxymoronic stat of the week?
I do. And I kind of, in the name of pivoting, I had to pivot when I got a little flack for being too nice to Malzahn. Then I had to pivot to going right back to hating on Malzahn because I don't want to be known as the flip-flopper over here. Okay. So I do respect Malzahn. If I saw him in a room, I wouldn't just give him the bird or something like that. I would at least say, no, I do respect him. But anyways, so I just went back to, George O'Leary and the 4 coaches that we've had. I guess if you want to call it in the modern era, George O'Leary till now. And the lowest winning percentage out of all of the coaches was Malzahn. And yes, I know Heupel and Frost only combined for 5 years, but at 53% overall winning percentage, it was a point lower than O'Leary, despite O'Leary being here for whatever it was, 12 years. And then conference percentage wise, Malzahn had by far the lowest at 47%. The second lowest was actually O'Leary at 63%. Yes, it coincides with the move to the Big 12, but it is worth noting that it's nearly 20 percentage points lower than O'Leary and out of the last 4 coaches. Malzahn is the only coach to not win a conference title of the past 4 and not make a New Year's 6 bowl game. Also, with only 2 NFL players drafted in 4 years, he has the least of any coach in any 4-year stretch dating back to the year of 2000. So talk about being in the MAC conference. We had more draft picks in those 4-year stretches. He's only had Javon Baker and Tylen Grable. Now that could obviously change with, some players getting drafted this year. Maybe like a Kobe Hudson. I don't know. RJ Harvey maybe gets like a 0.5 for him because it'd be kind of not fully Malzahn didn't, recruit him, but, you got to give him some credit because most of his career was there.
I think Lee Hunter might come out this year too.
Okay. So you might get a couple more, but as of now, 2 in 4 years is not great. I think that's enough time to have a couple more by now, especially when you talk about the transfer portal and having a lot of seniors. It's not like we were some, fully underclassmen team or something like that over the last couple of years. So I thought that was interesting. And then also this was the first time that we were under 500 at home since 2015, our winless season. So all new lows under Malzahn, and that's my piece for tonight.
Well, the funny thing about the George O'Leary comment too was that included 2 winless seasons.
That's the crazy part about it, is that 2 winless seasons and he still had a better percentage record than Malzahn.
22 to 24 losses that essentially occurred like all in 2 seasons. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for leaving Gus on a high note.
Leaving no doubt that
this was the right decision. Exactly. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and pivot again to Josh's sometimes funny fact of the week. Josh, do you have one for us?
I do, and so we're getting limited on our facts because we have limited opponents. We have and usually
limited coaching staff.
Tie something together. No, I didn't do a coaching staff one. So we didn't talk about it yet in the podcast, but our next men's basketball opponent is Tarleton State, a proud member of the WAC, who are basketball road warriors. Their 3rd home game happened during this recording, and we're already in early December.
Did they win?
They're probably going to win. It's against a lower level team, and I don't. And to our previous point, Ben, I don't know what Tarleton State is a comp to, because looking at their schedule, it's not great.
Yeah.
But how many home? Usually, a team has a good amount of home games a year. How many home games does Tarleton State have this season?
Ooh,
All right, I'm gonna stop looking at their schedule then, because I don't want to just ruin it. How many home get, like including conference, like just in general?
Just total games. Usually there's something, 30 some odd games a season.
About 32 games, yeah.
32, yeah. How many games do they have at home this year?
Well, just because you came up with the stat, I'm going to say something like, I don't know, 11.
Alan?
Alan?
He's on Twitter. Roger?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm trying. My computer's not charging. I was trying a different outlet. I'm gonna go with 9.
We gotta have at least 8 or 9 home games in conference, don't you? You gotta have at least.
You said you made it seem like it was something very rare, so
yeah.
I don't know. I was just going with a crazy number.
I was gonna go 12.
Well, Ben actually hit it on the nose at 11, which is an insane. It's so few. and I was looking at that because they've had 3 games at home. The only team you've heard of is Sam Houston State because, well, we played them in football, and I thought they would have a bunch in conference too. We have like at least 8 or 10 or something like that. No, they have, after today, they have 8 more games at home the entire rest of the season, which is just floored me. Which I'm sure they're taking a lot of pay games and making money. So,
well, I mean, you look at their opponents at SMU, at Florida State, at number 12 Baylor, at Michigan. So like they're playing, they're taking some pay games. They're getting blown out in those games, by the way. So we better blow them out too.
Did you see what was it? Was it Michigan was like 101-40 or something like that? There's a couple of like, whoa, what's going on here? I think they lost by 30 or 40 to Baylor. So
that was the Baylor game, 104-41.
Jeez.
So I think that's maybe a team we leave off the schedule next time, because I can't imagine that's going to help our net at all.
They're obviously far quad 4.
Yeah. They are. We're like 86 in the net right now, and I think if we would have gotten past LSU, it would have been a bit better. But we bring that up in another week or two, because the Big 12 in basketball in net right now is not good. As of this recording, Villanova beat Cincinnati, who is unranked Villanova at home. Right, it wasn't Cincinnati. Cincinnati went over to Villanova and lost. So like, we're just not doing as good as a basketball conference this year in net and other things, and that's just not great.
All right. Well, on that note of positivity, let's go ahead and get our quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch, and there is one item on here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I'm going to add stuff to it if you don't. So
yeah, I would just say why don't you just go with it, because this is Jenny Maurer leaving UCF volleyball after 2 years as head coach, and in many years as Todd's
9 years with the program. So Jenny Maurer leaves UCF volleyball. They obviously had a tough season this season. UCF volleyball was in complete rebuild mode. They had a lot of youth, a lot of freshmen and sophomores that were starting to show some promise. Jenny Maurer was, as you mentioned, with Todd Dagenet for a long time, and was head of recruiting. So she did a lot of the recruiting, or supported a lot of the recruiting from Todd Dagenet. She was the one, I remember meeting her years and years and years ago. I was talking to Todd. We were at one of the infamous George O'Leary. This must have been 14, 15, somewhere around there, when he was AD. And he was having, we used to have the meet and greets with the players on the football team. And he kind of extended that to the rest of the programs during that. And so I was talking to Todd about actually expansion. Todd was never one to shy away and loved UCF, and so did Jenny Maurer. And she rolled up on her little golf cart as she was bringing around recruits, and she was excellent with them, and was a big reason that Todd was successful in his recruiting. So it's sad that she didn't get an opportunity to really hopefully develop, because it wasn't a complete rebuild. But at the same time, the numbers this year and the lack of competitiveness hurt her quite a bit. She made UCF her home, and was a great representative for us for a long time. So we wish her nothing but the best, because Jenny Maurer, I've interacted with her a lot over the years, and she's always been great in person and really passionate about UCF volleyball. So sad day for UCF volleyball, and wish her nothing but the best.
Yeah. I don't think she got enough time. I'll just leave it at that.
I agree.
She should have been fired.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, and the other side of that is, yes, that's true. What's the real reason? Yes, the season was horrible. We all know that. But
there's a ton of injuries on their team too. Like, I don't know. I just didn't get enough
something
time.
else seems up. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, it may be that, Todd kind of promoted his heir apparent, and Terry Mahajer maybe wanted to completely clear out the system and reboot the program, and she was the last vestige of that program. So, because Todd was very boisterous, and I, from what I understand, people who are like that don't get along well with Terry, and if that's the case, then that could be a little bit of clearing out the locker room, so to say. All right, that's all we have for you this week. It was a long show. There was a lot to talk about. We could have gone even longer than what we did. Very easily. We suffer with you. We're surprised with you. We're on pins and needles as far as the coaching position as our head football coach is concerned, but we appreciate you as well, and hopefully we'll get you a little bit more involved. So if there's anything that you guys want to hear about, talk about, whatever, let us know. Keep the comments going. Tell your friends. Like, follow, subscribe. Go Knights, and
Charge
on. So
Come on,
did
Josh.
anyone keep this stuff going after the?
I did. Yeah,
He did.